we all remember one of the big stories that, of course, came from the referendum, and that was, of course, all the massive amount of misinformation that was put out there by, well, bots. And the fact that these types of bots spreading misinformation about Brexit, the way that the Leave campaign conducted the campaign using, targeted ads, the way that they did it, using all that kind of stuff, still actually quite a problem. Not only just that, but of course, the Russia report as well, saying how much misinformation was shared by, of course, well, the Russian bot farms, with a direct, of course, trying to affect the outcome of the referendum. We know this. It wasn't a surprise, but to no one's surprise, of course, the Conservatives did nothing about it, purely because, of course, if you start asking questions about, of course, misinformation and how misinformation maybe would affect people's voting decisions, or how they would vote, or how they would view certain kinds of subjects, which might then maybe provoke a certain kind of, I don't know, response to, flooding that, misinformation into a democracy. Obviously, quite something you think you would want to tackle. But of course, you've got to remember the Conservatives never did anything about that because, as we said just a moment ago, it would mean questioning, of course, the precious Brexit referendum, and of course can't question the Brexit referendum, that blessed hallowed date carved upon in stone. Can't question that. But of course, we should, of course, question this, because guess what? This now deep fake stuff, the deep fake misinformation, is, of course, being spread even more, with now apparently our local elections in quite a worrying state. Guess what? And guess who's benefiting from this? Of course, it's Reform UK. And of course, whenever they are asked about all this stuff, well, that's not misinformation. That's all just, lies. That's all just a smear by the press. And of course, if they get in and if they ever, say, hey, this is actually a problem, we should do something about it, just like the Conservatives, they'll sit on their hands and do nothing. This is why one of the things I said at the going into the last general election, and even now, I will still say this: Labour really, really need to look at, election funding, and of course, maybe even, misinformation, and how misinformation gets spread online, and what we should do to tackle it. Because one of the most extreme things proposed, that's out there is, you have, on election day, you have a social media blackout. Like, social media on election day doesn't work. That's probably one of the most extreme things I've certainly ever heard put forward, how you solve this problem. But it is something that we should be discussing, should be worried about, and something Labour, I can't fathom why, again, they are also not taking this seriously, because they absolutely should be taking this seriously. It is a problem, and it is, long, long hangover that still has not been solved to this day. So we're going to go into this even more, because now this deep fake misinformation might have, of course, threatened our local elections. Well, we'll see, of course, in time, when people, of course, look into this. By now, the results will probably be out, etc. I am, of course, doing this the day before of this, so that's why I'm not talking about the elections at the moment. But, we'll see what happens. Probably either the next video, or I will have done a live stream on the Friday morning about it, depending on what happens. Depending, hay fever, of course, as well. Because, this week has been, Jesus, trees and pollen been kicking my ass. Anyway, let's get into this. So, before we do, though, please remember to click on the like, share, and of course, subscribe button down below. There are links to my Patreon page, the donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, as always, there's the Pony Club down below as well. So, as always, let's crack on then into this. So, this comes from The Independent. The title of "The Brexit-Style Deepfake Misinformation is Still a Danger Now to Local Elections, Industry Body Warns." So fears have now once again been raised that the sort of election interference with fake stories and narratives on polling day, which marred the Brexit referendum, is now still a threat in the UK. This warning now comes as many voters in parts of England prepare to go to the polls to cast their ballots for the county councils and mayoral elections, as well as the parliamentary by-election in Runcorn. These elections could, of course, see Nigel Farage Reform Party propelled now from a fringe party to one now challenging for power. But there are calls now for an urgent change to the law to help deal with misinformation going online when people go to the polls. The BCS, the Childhood Institute for IT, which represents IT and tech engineers, said that these restrictions on reporting on election day means that mainstream media is now unable to counter narratives which could emerge as people go to the polls. Almost 2/3 of tech experts now believe broadcasters and recognized by media online platforms should be allowed to rebut misinformation on polling day. While the BCS and the Chartered Institute for IT did not mention Brexit by name, the issue, of course, did come to the surface with the EU referendum. And still, this is a point. We should be worried about this still to this day. I do not understand why they don't really talk about this more. This is still a problem. This is still a significant issue with our economy, our democracy, when stuff like this misinformation can go around, cause huge amounts of damage. You've seen in America the stuff about the tariffs. A misinformed tweet was like claiming that Trump was going to undo all the tariffs. It wasn't. The White House kind of say, no, that's false. And you saw it go whoop, whoop, like that. Again, same for stuff we saw obviously last summer, the riots that came about because of misinformation. We need to really think about these, how we can fight back against this type of stuff. But it is something we should be looking at. It is something that should be looked into more. And I really do wish this is something Labour should focus on. So, a parliamentary investigation by the Culture, Media and Sport Committee did look at the ways of how social media bots were able to spread misinformation. Researchers at St George's University of London found that over 13,000 accounts tweeted on just 2 weeks before and after the referendum, before disappearing after the polling stations closed. So yeah, all the accounts set up, tweeting, gone. So while, of course, the 350 million a week promise from the NHS promise for Vote Leave bus came very symbolic with misinformation, bots spreading claims on immigration and other inflammatory issues. That's very true. Something that never gets spread. This, we all know about the 350 million a week NHS promise. We all know that was a massive lie, massive misinformation that Vote Leave put out. But it's never really talked about all those bots. Because a lot of people voted Leave because of immigration, because they were told, oh, if you vote Leave, somehow this solves immigration. No, it hasn't. How do you solve the immigration problem? You make sure the asylum system, the immigration system is running properly. Guess what? Conservatives didn't do that. And I'm worried about where Labour is going to sort of go with those at the moment, but we'll see. Anyway, so analysis, of course, the 2019 general election by Lord Ashcroft found that over 16% of voters made their decisions on polling day itself or when completing their postal ballot. So you see how instantly, just by the fact that you have a day where you can't talk about politics, and yet 16% of voters make their decision right on that day, kind of important on that front. Now, of course, 62% of IT professionals surveyed do believe that a ban now on election coverage on polling day should now include an exemption to allow mainstream media to counter online misinformation. I think that would be quite good. I think that allowing that exception to counter misinformation, I think would be very good indeed. Dan Howell, the head of policy for the BCS, said, As well as now with the head as we head into our local elections, we will now see which often sees very lower turnout and of course less public attention than general elections. It is now even more important that broadcasters are empowered to challenge misinformation and disinformation in real time. Currently, while polling stations are open, the rules prevent even the most reputable media outlets from responding now to fake or even misleading claims, leaving voters very vulnerable to online rumors, deep fakes, and other forms of other forms of manipulation. Can't even say it. Manipulation at times when trusted information is, of course, so critical. Allowing broadcasters to fact check and even correct misleading content as it appears would help, of course, voters feel more confident in the information they rely on to ensure that elections at every level are, of course, fair and transparent and better trusted by the public. Again, I agree. I think that's an exemption we should be looking at. If there is something on polling day that comes out, BBC, ITV, Channel 4 News, just off the top of my head, can't respond to it. Newspapers can't respond to it, can't tweet out about it. Oh, yeah, by the way, this stuff that's currently going viral today, that's wrong. This is why it's wrong. Yeah, might be might be something quite good to see. So the current, of course, regulations set by Ofcom state that the discussion and analysis, of course, of election issues must, of course, finish when the polling stations open and not resume, of course, until they close. This also includes whilst people are, of course, voting, broadcasters may not publish the results of any opinion polls. In that very same survey, of the technologists, 65% of respondents expressed concern that deepfakes would have a very significant influence on the result of the 2024 UK general election. So we didn't have any, I think, serious deepfake in the last general election. The next one we might have. The next one we might have a very serious deepfake information. Now it was good, if you remember this. Before the election kicked off, all the parties came together to condemn deep fake stuff, and that if anything emerged that was deep fake, they all came together and said, if anything comes out and it seemed to be, deep fake stuff, we will all come out and we will condemn it. That I think was good. That is something that should be absolutely encouraged by all parties to sort of take that attitude to like deep fake stuff. And if they did say anything about it, it turns out it was a deep fake, to come out and say, actually, no, we were wrong, we were tricked, it was a deep fake. Something we should be very much worried about, something we should be looking into a lot, as AI is only going to get better and better and better. And that technology is only going to get better and better and better. And it will become a lot more difficult to spot that type of stuff, to see that, we've got to take that threat very seriously. And we cannot wait. We cannot wait to run an election where something like that happens. And turns out a couple of weeks later was a deep fake, and that affected millions of people's voting decisions. We cannot wait for the fire to happen before before we actually put in regulations where that fire could have been prevented. That's essentially what we're looking at. And I worry that politicians aren't taking that seriously. I really do worry, because it's something we should be looking at a lot more, because AI is only going to get more and more better. It's going to get more complex, and you are going to get situations where deep fake stuff does come out. You'll remember the Labour conference. Was it 20? It was 23, 24. It was, and this deep fake thing came out of Keir Starmer having a go at like a staffer or something like that. And again, turned out deep fake. That's the type of stuff we should be, worried about and concerned about, and make sure that we do. And even if, let's say, something came out about Nigel Farage, let's say there was a deep fake got published about Nigel Farage, yeah, we should also condemn that as well. Because there are hundreds, thousands of legitimate ways you can criticize Nigel Farage and take him down. You do not need to make a deep fake to take the man down. That if, again, something like that did come out, we should be saying that's a deep fake. That is wrong. That is, the wrongful spreading of misinformation. Meanwhile, if you do want to look about how bad Nigel Farage is, here's all this litany of information, But yeah, it's something we should worry about, something we should really think about a lot more. I only think sometimes issues like this only come about when we're coming into an election, and by that point, it's too late to really write policy, come up with legislation, and pass the bill to sort that stuff out. Because, elections here, can't really do anything about it now. So, something we should, I think, be making a push for. But, as always, let me know what you think down below, of course, in the comments. And, of course, we'll see you all next time.